different from emptiness. Emptiness does not differ from form. Form itself is emptiness. Emptiness itself forms sensations, perceptions, formations, and consciousness are also like this. Shariputra, all dharmas are marked by emptiness. They neither arise nor cease, are neither defiled nor pure, neither increase nor decrease. Therefore, given emptiness, there are no forms, sensations, perceptions, formations, or consciousness. No eye, ear, no tongue, body, or mind. No sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, or objects of mind. No realm of sight, and so forth down to no realm of mind consciousness. There is neither ignorance nor extinction of ignorance, and so forth down to neither old age and death nor extinction of old age and death. No suffering, no cause, no cessation, no path, no knowledge, and no attainment. With nothing to attain, a bodhisattva realize Ungraspable and thus the mind is without hindrance. Without hindrance, there is no fear. Far beyond all inverted views, one realizes nirvana. All Buddhas of past, present, and future rely on Prajnaparamita, and thereby attain unsurpassed, complete, perfect enlightenment. Therefore, know the Prajnaparamita as the great miraculous mantra, the great bright mantra, the supreme mantra, the incomparable mantra, which removes all suffering and is true, not false. Therefore, we proclaim the Prajnaparamita mantra, the mantra that says Gate, Gate, Bara, Gate, Bara, Samgate, Bodhisattva.
Having chanted the heart of the great perfect wisdom sutra, we reverently offer the Mary to the benefactor and founder of the doctrine, the original teacher Shakyamuni Buddha. To the countless Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that permeate the myriad worlds, to the eternal three jewels in the 10 directions, and to all teachers of the true Dharma who transmitted the flame. We may repay their compassionate blessings. We further offer this Mary to all the Dharma protecting devas, to the Dharma protecting saints, to the spirit of this place, to the temple protecting spirits. While we pray for His flourishing of the true Dharma, peace in the land, harmony among nations, tranquility with the Sangha, wisdom and prosperity for countless supporters, continual turning of the two wheels. May we with all beings realize the Buddha way.
All honor
Masako, Kieran Hine, Gary Garman, Sue Critus, Kevin McComas, David Brissett, Garday Wells, Jim Peters, Lloyd Plord, Hale, Nathaniel Clute, Alice Wong, Jenny Hennessy, Kim Socha, Barbara Millsap, Nancy Campbell, Hiroshi Wasami, Kathy Clevenger, Rod and Julia Rayner, Marsha Azumi, Rona McIntosh, Akaya Higashi, Mildred Myers, and to all those who have died in natural and human-made disasters, including acts of terrorism, violence, political persecution, and war. May they be serene through the transition we call death. We also dedicate this Mary to immigrant families: Coral Mac, Margarita O'Brien, Daniel MJC, Richard Gilbert, Anne Grant, Michael Myers, Nicole Mothers. May the heart of compassion illuminate their lives. We pray that all beings may prosper and all misfortunes cease. Zazen. Sutra opening
Tojun,
Mandy,
Mandy,
Amber,
Amber,
Anshin,
Anshin,
Ren,
Ren,
Luke,
Luke,
Tracy,
Tracy,
Carrie,
Carrie,
Francis,
Francis,
Christopher,
Christopher,
Sally,
Sally,
Jay,
Jay,
June,
June,
Bobby
Bobby,
Jokai,
Jokai,
Kevin,
Kevin,
Shinyu,
Shinyu,
Kishin,
Kishin, Myeon,
Arya,
Arya,
Ming,
Ming,
Jackie,
Jackie,
James,
James,
Christian,
Christian,
Will,
Will,
Jushin,
Jushin,
Margaret,
Margaret,
Zach,
Zach,
Molly,
Molly,
Alita,
Alita,
Matthias,
Matthias,
Anshin,
Anshin,
Olivia,
Olivia,
Oni,
Oni,
Ray,
Ray,
Nancy,
Nancy,
Paul,
Paul,
Dawn,
Don,
Danielle,
Danielle,
Charles,
Charles,
Amalia,
Amalia,
Tetsugen,
Tetsugen,
Johnny.
John. Good morning. Morning. Please feel free to move around. More this morning than usual. I can't see you. That's okay. But if you want to see, don't feel shy about moving around a little bit. So nice to step into a room of people who are meditating. Usually at the beginning of meditation, I'm just sitting down, so I'm right in the middle of it. But this morning I've been working with a week off of daily practice, and so my bladder wasn't quite in sync with what's supposed to happen. I drank too much tea this morning. So as I was walking in, I went to go to the restroom, and just as meditation started, I come back in. It's really nice, you know. I don't know how many of us are in here, maybe 50 or 60 or something, and just kind of the hum of our human fallibility, kind of warming up the space. So it's quite nice. I don't know about you, but I have a little bit of a molasses spice haze from the past week. My family usually gets together for the Christmas holidays, and it's great. But a lot of sleeping and eating. So a good day to talk a little bit about vow. So we're coming up upon the new year, or the new year's coming up upon us. And it's always a good time for us to allow the calendar to call us to attention a bit. Really, it could be any time. Probably should be all the time. But it is. I think it's a good habit to pay attention to the passing of time as it's marked in some conventional sense, and to take that as an opportunity to take stock of what's going on. And so as we let this coming new year call us to attention, then one of the things that we pay attention to is what is our intention. So we're called to attention, to pay attention to, well, what am I doing? What do I want to be doing? What is important? Maybe even what is most important? And how should I pursue that? Maybe a corollary to the how should I pursue that is, how can I cut through the smog? I was thinking a little while this morning about what term to use. What are we cutting through? And it's not exactly bullshit, that's not quite right, actually. That's what came to my mind. But the problem with that way of thinking about it is you're kind of already saying, well, all of this stuff is like not needed, but even the bullshit's really needed, right? That's where the fertility comes from, to grow the crops and all these other kinds of things. So the smog is maybe a little bit different kind of feeling. Like it just seems like there's just all this stuff. So much. It just is filling up all of the space, and a lot of it doesn't smell quite right. And I feel like if I'm going to give a good shot to 2026 to put my intention in action, that somehow I need to be able to cut through it. At least I have that kind of feeling.
And Buddha Dharma is pretty clear about the medicine. The medicine is vow. The medicine is conviction, determination, kind of immovability of spirit that faces the facts of being alive, the facts of life, and pursues what we have come to know is true through our sacred commitments. Easy enough. In fact, vow in some formulations of the path is considered one of the most important folds of the path. At this temple, we usually study what's called the paramitas. Sometimes we translate that as perfections or crossing overs. They're just different facets of the path that, or different ways of talking about the path of awakening to put it into practice. And the oldest formulation is called the 6 paramitas. That's usually the formulation that we study here at Buddha Eye. But there's another formulation that came on a little bit later, that's 10. When everyone got excited about 10, had something apparently to do with the invention of zeros. And pretty soon 10 became sort of the cool number to have. So they added a few on, which is fine because actually everything's contained in any of them, right? If you pick out one facet of the path, everything's in there. So for those of you familiar with the 6 paramitas, the further 4 to the 10 paramitas are, if wisdom's the 6th, 7th is upaya, which is like skillful means. 8th is vow. 9th is power, and 10th is jhana or something like gnosis. But it's interesting to note there that in that formulation, that vow itself is one of the ways to describe liberation. It's one of the ways to describe, and one of the ways that we may be taught about liberation. Now, as we wade into this a little bit, I want to talk about what maybe from a Buddhist perspective would be called a right view of vow, and here comes these tricky words, wrong view of vow. I'm going to use, that's one of my vows this year, so one of my intentions is to use the word wrong more. Well, we're just so afraid of it. And actually, you don't have to think that you're ultimately right about everything to use the word wrong. So here we go. So oftentimes when we are thinking about sacred commitments or vow, we have a kind of very narrow way of thinking about it. It's something like personal resolve. And I think oftentimes when we get called to attention by the new year, that's where we try to find our foothold. What's my personal resolve? Where I'm standing up as me with all of the force of my intention to try to face life in the best way that I possibly can. We're kind of pushing on the world. It's self-generated and self-sustained. That kind of foothold in Buddhism, I would say generally, is considered wrong view, right? That you're thinking that you would do it by yourself, that your independence is where your capacity for conviction comes from, is a kind of twisted way to understand what conviction is about. Right? To think that it's something that's your own. That actually when we enter into a path of deep commitment, what we find is a constant revelation of our non-self, not ourself, not the firmness of me as the one who is holding this conviction. Something ungraspable, something that can only be known through the living it out, is what comes forward. When we bind our life to a way or to an endeavor, or we could say when our life, maybe it's not our doing, when our life is bound to an endeavor or a way, the participation of myriad things is evident. And you can just see this in your life if you think about places where you have sacred commitments which you hold. For some of us, family commitments are that way, but not for everybody. But if that's one for you, think about like when you're really dedicated to someone as being part of your family. It's not just your fortitude which carries that conviction forward. If you're really paying attention to investing and carrying out what it means, like in my case, to be a father, I see that like, it's not that I don't have anything to do with it, it's just that it's not really centered on me. Imagine that, right? That there's all kinds of forces that are coming together, all kinds of beings participating in my capacity to carry out that conviction of fatherhood, that sacred commitment or vow as being a father and a grandfather. Yeah. I always like to brag about that. She's so cute. When we smile, she's just like this big. She's just smiling all the time. So it's really a treasure. Anyway, but you just see everything's there. It's involved in it. That's when you really are living out something that you believe in, that you have invested in with your heart. Right? Then you just see it's not about you exactly. It's about something much bigger, and there's something really important about that. One of the things that's important about it is it scrubs off our weird attitude about conviction. Like you ever meet somebody who's really, really just on their high horse about something? They're like very convicted about it and they're really on their high horse. It just kind of stinks, I'm not saying they're not carrying out their sacred commitment, but it's like, like let's say you're feeding people who need fed, and then you have this big attitude about a grocer who's selling food rather than giving it away. How ridiculous that would be, right? Where do you think the food's going to come from if there aren't grocers? But you can sometimes run into that. I'm sure in yourself, if you pay attention, you will see that place where you sort of like, well, my conviction is so important because da 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 da, and then I start to push against some other group of people who I see are doing it in a solid way. But when we really realize all the involvement of all of these different kinds of beings, that kind of stench tends to flake off. I had a nice walk yesterday. I had gone for the first time out to a place, I think, Carrie, you told me about this, McGowan Creek up in Mohawk area. It's really interesting, just this piece of land. You ever notice when you look at the map, there's all these little squares? BLM land, private land, BLM land, private land, BLM land. I learned yesterday that had to do with railroad building. They wanted to convince the railroads to come through, so they gave these land grants in such a way that would pull the railroads through. I don't quite understand why it worked, but that's what Mr. Sullivan said. So we went up there for a walk, and it's just it's a stand that they just didn't log. Imagine that. And so there's this old growth forest there that you can walk through. It's quite stunning. It's like you would not be surprised if an Ewok popped out from behind any given little tree place or whatever. It's just moss and wet, and the smell is just amazing. Anyway, so I was walking through there, and there's many trees, many big trees, and then you come across like a really big tree, right? A couple 100 feet tall, maybe 6-7 feet in diameter. A fir tree, and they said they were figuring it was probably a few 100 years old, the sign there. And so when I come across that tree, I always make the practice of bowing and then putting my hand in my forehead against the tree and just being there for a few moments. And one thing that's so wonderful about that in that kind of environment is you can just really clearly feel that big tree, it is the whole forest. It's not like there's this whole forest and there's one big tree in the forest. It's like that tree which calls our attention out in a particular way is the totality of the forest there as this tree, and vice versa is also true. That's true of anything in the forest. My wife is much more interested in mushrooms than in big trees. She likes the big trees. Ooh, big trees. But then she finds these little white mushrooms. It's like a translucent. It looks very alien. So she's taking photos of there. So it's true of the little mushroom, but it's also true of the of that big tree. And I guess what I want to say here is a bodhisattva vow is more like that than it is like something that I've just stood up to do independently. A vow becomes a conduit for awakening. I mean that both in the sense that the vow provides a portal for our own awakening, but also that the vow provides a portal for the world of awakening to show up in our day-to-day lives. It provides a way that we can take concrete action in a day-to-day sense to live out this awakening of all beings, which is the central vow of the Bodhisattva. In Mahayana Buddhism in particular, there is a big focus on the Bodhi mind. Sometimes you'll hear it referred to as Bodai-shin if you're studying in Japanese tradition. I'm not sure in Chinese how to say it. Do you know how Daoren would say Bodhi mind in Chinese? Bodai-shin is in Japanese. Bodhi-shin, Bodhi-shin. And in the Tibetan they will say Bodhicitta comes from Puti-shin. Yeah. So this is really central teaching within Mahayana Buddhism, that there is this mind of awakening. And one of the things that's great about it is you can't really nail it down. Is it the mind that awakens? The mind that oftentimes people will explain it as being the mind that has given rise to the thought of awakening, to the conviction of awakening. But in Mahayana Buddhism, actually that thought of awakening, or the conviction of awakening, inspiration of awakening, and awakening are never separated. We don't say one comes first and then the other one comes afterwards. We say that they're always inseparably present. And that bodhicitta, or bodai-shin, if we focus on it from the aspect of the mind or the heart or the inspiration, we will call it that. If we focus on it from the aspect of how is it put into practice, then we will talk about vow, the bodhisattva vow. So the two are really inseparable. Sometimes if people are giving it a narrative discussion, they would say the first thing that happens is you meet a Buddha, and in meeting that Buddha, a fully awakened Buddha, that thought of awakening arises in your own heart, and then with the arising of that in your own heart, then you would make some concrete commitment, some sacred vow to carrying out the implications of what's arisen in your heart. Okay, that's the kind of story. For those of you who practice the offerings, the Hungry Ghost offerings that we practice on a very regular basis here at Buddha Ai, Om Bodhicitta Bodhahadayami. Om Bodhicitta Bodhahadayami. Om Bodhicitta, Om Bodhicitta Bodhahadayami. There's a arising of the Buddha mind. Om Sammaya Satobam. Om Sammaya Satobam. Sammaya is a sacred commitment, a vow, a path of carrying things out. Okay? So when we make those offerings to the Hungry Ghost, if this isn't making any sense to you, just bracket it for a second. But in the making of those offerings to the Hungry Ghost, then we are asking them to then take those offerings and to offer them back to the myriad beings and to dedicate their lives to the path, for them to open up the mind of bodhicitta and then to practice and then to teach us. So in that practice, the bodhicitta and then the carrying out the path, they arrive as those two mantras. Okay, enough of that. If we think about this, the bodhi mind, the bodhicitta, or the vow of the person who's given a rise to this bodhi mind, also known as a bodhisattva, it arises through wisdom and compassion, which is not something a being can have. We don't have compassion. It's not something you can possess. Compassion is like a way of seeing. Wisdom is like a way of seeing. Compassion may be like a way of touching. It's not a possession that you can have. So when we're thinking about this vow, we should be thinking about how are we a conduit for, as opposed to how am I a person that's going to make this thing happen. And it turns out a conduit for all beings is what a bodhisattva is dedicating themselves to. Zen Master Dogen, the founder of our school in Japan, says something wonderful about this, which he says about many things. He says that it's within mystical communion that the mind of awakening arises. It is not given by Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, and it is not created by oneself. It's in mystical communion that the mind of awakening arises. It is not given by Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, and it is not created by oneself. This term mystical communion is a tricky word, which kannon doko is the word in Japanese. Some of you will be familiar with that. But this kind of mystical communion means that we have some urge to move beyond the smog. We have some urge to move beyond the suffering of being. And because we have that kind of feeling, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are moved to respond. Now, in some sense, it means we may actually make a request. We may light a stick of incense, put our hands together and say, help me. Right? Or it might just be simply our state of being. But that heart that longs for or yearns for some other possibility, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas are moved by that and they respond. And in their response, the way of the Bodhisattvas and the way of the deluded being are intermingled. So that's where this mystical communion is a way that people try to translate this, right? It's a little bit fuzzy, but this idea that the lives of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas is intertwined with our lives. It's quite amazing, actually. And Dogen says that this is where the mind of awakening arises from. Again, the classical story would be that a sentient being meets a Buddha. And in meeting that Buddha, their own mind of awakening arises. To be seen by a Buddha is to then have the capacity for your own heart to be opened in that way. Now, you don't have to think about that just in some kind of like super faithful way, like I believe there's a Buddha and I'm going to meet the Buddha. Just look at the world, which is looking back at you all the time. Right? And in what way are you seen by the world? And in what way do you see the world? This is kind of emphasis within the Zen school. This mind of awakening that is not given to us by Buddhas or Bodhisattvas, but it's also not created by ourselves. Now, I would say that actually this situation of mystical communion is going on all the time, every day. You know, we don't think one thought or breathe one breath or walk one step or eat one meal without the participation of incountable numbers of beings. That's mystical communion. That our own attempt, our own wish for this clarity, everything's involved in that. And because it's involved, there's a certain way that we can proceed with the conviction or the vow of the awakening of all beings. Now, when we talk about it in this kind of very big way, like immense way, or a kind of all-inclusive way, it can sound kind of abstract. or maybe idealistic. But I want to make the case that this kind of way of thinking about it is actually very practical and self-sustaining. That the way that we may typically think about a vow, where it's like, okay, I've decided to do this, I'm going to commit to dropping 20 pounds or whatever it is, I'm going to stick it out, that way is actually not very practical. And just think about how March usually is, and you get a sense of how practical that approach is, right? That this other way is the way to really set a course that has meaningful longevity and can help guide these questions about what is most important and what should I pursue and how should I pursue it and how should I move through the what oftentimes feels like very ungraspable situation of my life to be able to carry out what it is that I care about. We'll say when we think about it in this way, that all beings are involved, that it comes from this very deep conviction about the awakening of all beings, that I didn't just think up myself or decide that I should do, but came because my heart turned through the encounter with other. That when that's the basis, I can feel down, not just into like, what do I want to do, but what is mine to do? What is mine to do? At what nexus of causes and conditions do I stand that means that this is work, that it doesn't mean only I can do it, but that really it's something for me to do. That's really different than just the hubris of what I think I ought to be or want to be. I know I've told the story a lot of times of my wife when I was a school teacher for a long time, and I was applying for jobs, and there's these jobs I wanted, and then the job I got, and the job I got, I was like, oh man, and they really needed me. It was in Yujin Gakuen, the Japanese immersion program, and in the middle school, and all the teachers would go there just like would flee because they could only last like a year. It was such a hard position. And there weren't very many people who could speak fluent Japanese who would be able to do the position, and then not a lot of I'm a pretty high energy fellow, and so getting in there and cutting it up with the middle school students, a lot of people couldn't quite handle it. I knew I would be, I don't know, good at it is the right word, but I could handle it, But I really didn't want to do it. And my wife looked at me while I was going through that struggle a little bit, and she said, well, do you want to do something that you want to do, or do you want to do what you're needed to do? I was like, man. Trying to marry somebody different. Well, it just was so true to me. That's why I still remember it today. I mean, this was 20-some years ago. I just remember it like it's the clearest bell. I was like, well, what are you doing, man? You're just trying to do what you want to do? Or are you trying to do what needs doing? I think we could use a lot more of that, actually, right now. We tend to kind of like think we're doing something, and then we're trying to make our life, you're trying to dress it up with these other things that we're doing. But what's really ours to do? That kind of reflection then leads to an investment or a commitment. And with that investment and commitment in the thing that is not necessarily what we wanted to do, but we know that it's mine to do, we've discerned enough that this is mine to do. As we commit to it and invest in it, the reason this is so practical is because the dynamic participation of everything that is beyond me and my doing becomes evident. And then you know it. And then it tells you something about your own conviction. Now, that thing you're investing in may be relatively alone from the perspective of other humans' involvement. When we're talking about all beings, sometimes people just start thinking it means that you should be in like a jamboree of humans, which some of us like that. I happen to be a person who likes that. But that's not necessarily the case. It may be a hermit, is investing in something very important, an awakened hermit anyway. That there's a participation of the whole forest, for example, in their hermitage. So the participation of all these other beings are not necessarily human beings, but that is the thing that we can look for in the conviction, in the vow. That's why we call them sacred commitments, or I like to call them sacred commitments. They're sacred because they're not just about this kind of lockdown. They're about this total interdependence of our being, which then arrives as something to do, as a way to invest ourselves. And then as the difficulties that come inevitably with anything that's worth doing, then our vow has a real capacity to carry us through, because it's based in a kind of conviction which is just not my personal conviction, but is a conviction that's part of that dynamic activity. So my encouragement to you as we come into this new year, before just jumping on what it is that you think you're supposed to do and kind of making explicit or sort of, mine are usually pretty tepid kind of commitments to do something that I know I should do, but rather than going on that, take it, really think these next few days as we're coming into the new year. What is mine to do? And it could be something very, very simple. Don't get sidetracked by altruism. That can just carry you into this whole other place, because that's marked as good, right? And so we would think that's what I'm supposed to do because it's good. It could be a huge sidetrack. Get down to what is yours to do, and then find out how to do it in a real way that's not just about you. That's a different kind of altruism. But when you just start out with a kind of altruistic vision, then it oftentimes just carries you away, and then you're ignoring all the stuff about your life because you can think about this altruistic vision of what you're doing. Mm-hmm. Right? So just really, what is mine to do? That may be just making a cup of tea for your mother. And doing that a little more often. It might be that simple. And then from there, feel like, okay, why is that important? Actually doing it, and then feeling for how is it not just about you, but it carries you forward in another way. That's all the very practical way to explore what is this thing called the Bodhisattva vow. So a few minutes if there's any questions or comments. Mm-hmm.
I don't know if the word is curious, maybe. You said that there's mystical communion and it was canon Dolko.
Yeah.
Is that the same canon as in canon Bodhisattva?
It's not.
Okay.
It's a slightly different, there's kanon and kano.
Oh, canon.
Slightly different.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was just wondering,
Yeah.
I was kind of interested in that relationship.
But if there's any bodhisattva that is considered kind of the supreme practitioner of this supplication and response, or this mystical communion, Avalokiteshvara is the one. Kanon, yeah. Kanon means to perceive the sounds, and is a shortened form of kanzeon, which is the perceiving the world sounds, but oftentimes called kanon or kwanyin. And kan means, in this case, is similar to the perceiving that is in Kanon's name, but it's a slightly different character, well, a totally different character, but it means more like to feel. Yeah, and Kanon's means more like to see. They're related, but a little bit different. Yeah.
Question. This is completely not what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
But at the end, when you said maybe it's just making a cup of tea with for your mother, it really smacked me. I realized I've been very focused on the way that my mother hurts me, and how I can be so embracing of all kinds of people and all of the things that they do, and not personalize it. And then there's this one person who is cut out from that, and is one of the closest people in my life, but can't find that. It's all about how she is to me, not about how I am out. And, kind of how to work with that.
I don't have much to say. Well, you obviously know what to do.
I mean, do I?
Yeah. I mean, to hang some conceptual stuff on it, I think, especially when it comes to family, and particularly our parents, that of basic orientations in the world are so heavily affected by our way of seeing them, being seen by them. And so the importance of returning to that, and like in your case, probably the capacity to do that with all kinds of people has a lot to do with not being able to do it with your mom, right? And so not being too hasty to try to just kind of beat yourself into shape like you should be able to do it with your mom, but take it up more really as a practice. And that's one of the ways that the very material, I'm going to use material in kind of a broad way, but the activities of the path are so important. So making a cup of tea for your mom, or coffee, or jamba juice, or whatever she likes, and making that offering to her, even within the painfulness of the relationship, that's a much deeper practice than just trying to say, I should be able to accept my mom this way, and so I'm going to do this as an act of doing that, and I'm going to kind of be disappointed if I can't feel the way that I want to be feeling. That actually just kind of forcing yourself to do it and let your feelings be your feelings is another kind of practice. And what we find is in the act of offering, which we can believe in, we know its power and its truth, then the actuality of the situation can be transformed by that practice, as opposed to deciding how we're supposed to feel ahead of time. Then we can't really transform it. We're just sort of trying to bootstrap it again, basically. And here, like there's no you without your mom, and no mom without you. I mean, that's true of everything, but like your mom is like super obvious, right? And so you can come into that offering in a way that is both more difficult because of the level of intimacy and importance of it, but also you know why it's so true in a kind of immediate way. So so that would be my my suggestion, is just kind of that sort of straightforward approach.
I have a question. I really resonated with some of what you said at the very end. And I have been finding with my job as working with at-risk youth, that I have been focused so much on how I'm showing up and contributing to what I need to do, that I am losing sight of how the flip of what you were explaining, where the tree is also, where the tree is the forest, but the forest is also the tree. So I'm focusing so much on how I'm presenting in this space that I'm also forgetting part of why I came there is to learn from the kids. And so I'm forgetting, I'm becoming too involved with myself.
That's a beautiful insight.
I'm curious.
One of the things as you're talking that I'm thinking of is another further complexity that happens, and maybe I'll start with the punchline and then explain what I mean, is really the kind of true vows will break our heart. And when you're, like in your case, working with at-risk youth, we're in a society that is, has a lot of sickness. And so now you're there with conviction, a commitment to care for and help lift up these kids. And one of the ways we can protect ourselves from the heartbreak is for it to be about us and how I'm showing up. Mm-hmm. But actually, our heart's going to break in that situation. That's like, there's sort of no way out of it. In fact, it has to for the work to really happen. Mm-hmm. We can't be true enough in the situation without that. No, we don't set out for that to happen. But if we really have that kind of conviction to do the work, it will then come, and it will be difficult in some profound way. The reason that's so important to see is there's a whole bunch that's not that. There's just a whole bunch which is like, man, yeah, maybe this is an at-risk kid, but it's like he's great, amazing, has this, does that. Like the truth of their vibrancy and humanity is cut off if we're not willing to see that part that breaks, because there's a sickness there that we can't just fix. We can only respond to the symptoms as we are in the situation. And then sometimes we get to a place where something can be turned over and some real transformation can happen. But it takes a lot of presence through a lot of difficulty and amazing stuff to get to the place where that thing might shift. So I guess the reason I'm saying all of that is it sounds to me like you found some really meaningful work, and then coming to the place where you realize, like, man, it can't be about me is this very important turning point. And whatever level of emotional maturity you have now, mature some more. Because this is how you mature, is to take those things on. But it really is can be very heart-wrenching. What I found in my career, both as a priest, but maybe in this instance I would talk about as a school teacher in particular, that once I saw what you're expressing today, and that could flip over, I knew what a gift it was to me to be in that situation. And that doesn't mean it was always easy, but it meant a kind of shedding of my own idea of who I was, or what I was, all that clinging of it being about me, so to speak. So I just really encourage you in that, in that direction. You've got another week probably before you're back in the fire. Is that the case? Tomorrow. Okay. Well. Uh-huh.
I have a question. I guess it's in a way kind of piggybacking off of what we were just talking about. Mm-hmm. A few weeks ago, I had an experience with a student where she came to class and she gave me a bag, a little sachet, and I opened it, and it was just full of all of these little wonderful things. Like it was like a big old gem, little toys, just all of these things. And I was really struck by how all of these beautiful things in the bag had to have been so important to her. I know that she'd probably gone around her house and created this little bag for me. And I told her I couldn't keep it because I couldn't, because they were so lovely. Yeah. But I was just kind of struck by the idea of a little person, a little child, kind of wanting to show her love for me by giving me all these things that are special to her. And how I feel like sometimes as adults, like we give, but there's like an edge to it. It's just kind of like I'm giving because I want to be kind right now. I'm giving because I want to feel compassionate. And with her, it just kind of seemed like she just wanted to make me happy, and she just wanted to show me that she loved me. And I just want to know, how can we show up that way, even as, like, at least for me, a jaded adult who can sometimes be quite bitter about things. But just like this idea of like I'm going to give you what I have because it is important to me and you're important to me. How can we show up for each other that way? I just felt like there's like such a beautiful perfection and expression of love in that we kind of become divorced from as we go through life's experiences.
While you're talking, I'm thinking about one of my favorite stories in the Lotus Sutra, really favorite stories in all of the sutras, and it's the story of the dragon princess who in part of the sutra there's this discussion about how quickly a being could be awakened between some different people. I won't go into the story too much, but the Buddha then says, well, there is someone who attains awakening instantly, and she lives at the bottom of the ocean. She's the daughter of the dragon king of the ocean, and just as the Buddha says that, she arises out of the ocean, and she comes forward, and she has a jewel, and she presents it to the Buddha, and the Buddha receives it. It goes on, and there's a bunch of things we could say about that, but that piece right there, she's said to be, I believe, 7 years old, and she gives this gem to the Buddha. Then she becomes the celestial Buddha, and all these things happen. But that scene right there, and her capacity to awaken instantaneously is about her capacity to entrust that jewel to the Buddha without hesitation. So when you're talking about this delightful young woman that your life is entwined with, she's giving you that bag every day. I mean, that's her heart, right? And because it's holiday season or whatever, she thinks, oh, I'll gather some things together. And so her heart takes a material form, which she could give to you to express that trust and care. And so seeing that and appreciating it, when I think about how is it that I might be able to practice like that girl or like the dragon princess, I think about what it is that I invest in, what do I trust, and how do I give that jewel to that. Not to something because I think I'm supposed to give my jewel to it, or because it's expedient to give my jewel to that. She doesn't come up and just toss the jewel to anybody. She goes right to the Buddha and gives it to the Buddha. That's another way to think about what vow is that I'm going to give my heart to what is most centrally important, in this case, to awakening. So what would it be like if we were able to give that jewel of our heart to the Buddha that we met in each being that we met, to make that our practice, to meet the Buddha as each being that we meet? That's what my teacher said when I he was very complex mind. He will talk about all kind of things. You think I'm confusing. He's like just... but at one point I asked him, I said, what's your practice? And he said, to see each being as a Buddha. That's it. So I don't think there's so much of a how to do that, because the how still kind of carries a lever. Like, what am I gonna force to do something? I think it's more like that's what our vow is to live that way. And are we gonna do it all the time? No. That's why we need the vow, so that we can come back to it again and again and again and again, and we can say, I'm not going to listen to this person because they have power, and not listen to this person because they don't have power. I'm going to trust this person because they live in this dominant place, and I don't really trust this person. It's totally inverted from that. Is actually, I'm going to look for the truth in every being, whether, is it easier in a 7-year-old girl who brings you a bag of gems than some other type of people, but that should really be our conviction. So last thing I would say is this, in a couple days we have a New Year's ceremony. Is that Wednesday? Thursday. Which is the first. Yeah. That's a good day to have a New Year's Day ceremony.
I was confused, the digest did say Wednesday, January.
Yeah, it was wrong.
Oh.
So just.
Maybe that was why I was.
January 1st is January.
January 1st is January 1st. Yeah. So and I think it's at noon. Is that right? At noontime, and it's really fun. And we eat some delicious New Year's food that's carefully prepared by many people, traditional in Japan, mochi and a couple kinds of New Year's soup. And then we fan the Prajnaparamita Sutras, so 600 volumes of the Prajnaparamita Sutras. And that kind of like the fun, energetic quality of it is all about this investment that I've been talking about today. And that's actually what a life can feel like if we invest like that. It feels like that kind of celebration. It feels that kind of like a rising of energy through your being to pay attention and to live through kind of conviction. So if you're able to, on the first, please come by, and the drum will be thumping, and we'll have a little party. Yeah.
I have an announcement. Just our temple, our practice is to rely completely on the generosity of the community. We don't charge dues or fees for anything. We don't have membership, and we all contribute by showing up to be here and practice, to take care of the temple, and also with financial donations. And at this time of year, we're doing our year-end appeal, and we have approximately $12,000 remaining of our $70,000 goal. So wow, thank you everybody. That's amazing, and hopefully we can contribute and make it to our goal.
On that note, I will say today is the last day of our craft sale. And I happen to notice that there is a very beautiful merino wool scarf out there that sweetheart has made, and someone in this room might want it. Anyway, it's over by the jewelry. Let's see, and to help you with any purchases you might want to make, there's Shinyu, and I believe Anya is working with her. Thank you.
And I have an announcement, or two, possibly three. On January 9th, we're going to have the first of our fundraising events, which will be a movie. And perhaps some of you have seen it. Marcel the Shell with shoes on. Has anybody seen it? Of all those people, did you like it?
Yes.
Yes.
A lot.
I cried a lot.
Absolutely. Anyone else recommend it to others?
I recommend it.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so come join us that night. The next day, in the middle of the day, we're going to have tree school. For anybody who's interested, has ever had a question about trees, we're going to have this enormously enthusiastic tree expert here, and then to kick off our tree planting project. And on the following day, and this is what I'm telling you now, because you're going to have to think about this. If you know a piece of land that wants a tree, we have someone coming here on Sunday the 10th, whatever that Sunday is. The 11th. Okay, Sunday the 11th. And they have trees that they can give us, that they're donating to us to give to the community. So if you have they're native trees, and they will be available to you. But you need to think about this because a tree needs a spot. So.
And they are very small.
And they're very small. Yeah, you can take them
hard,
home.
yeah.
No, you can take them home. They're little. I don't know.
They're about this tall. I'm breaking them.
Do you want to say something?
They
about
will get
this?
big. Given time.
Okay, those are my trees. Thank you.
I have an announcement. Kishin and I were your greeters today. Welcome. If you have any questions about the temple or anything, come find us while we're having our treats or our coffee, and if we don't know the answer, we will find out who does for you.